Coming up on Tower Talks, students talk about the Paris attacks and their thoughts on Governor Abbott's announcement to reject refugees. All this and more coming up on Tower Talks. I'm your host, Mackenzie Palmer, and thank you for joining us tonight. In studio, we are joined by Andrew Jackson with the College of Republicans and Charlie Bonner with the University Democrats and head of the Students for Hillary organization here on campus. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Alrighty. So on Monday, Governor Greg Abbott announced the state of Texas will not be accepting Syrian refugees following the attacks in Paris on Friday. In a letter written to the President Obama, Abbott urged to halt all refugee resettlement into the United States, calling the threat to Texas by ISIS very real. Abbott's announcement was followed by both Arkansas and Michigan governors stating similar statements on Sunday. And as of today, 27 states have vowed not to cooperate with Syrian refugees. So do you guys, following that letter, do you guys agree with Governor Abbott? Should we keep out Syrian refugees? Charlie?
I would say absolutely not. I completely disagree with the governor on this one, and I actually think it's incredibly offensive what he's doing. He is trying to paint with a very broad brush an entire country of people as terrorists, and I think that's offensive, and it's not sharing in my American values or my values as a Texan. I mean, at the very base of the Statue of Liberty, it says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free." There's no asterisk there. There's no warning about some might be bad. It says, if you're looking for freedom, this is the place you should come. And I think we have to stay attuned to that, and I don't think the governor is.
Okay, your opinion?
I believe that Governor Abbott, the decision he made in writing this letter to President Obama, I believe that he was acting in what he feels to be the best interest of the people of Texas and, working for their safety. That's his role as a governor, to keep his safe state, or his state safe. And, this summer, there have been, threats of ISIS, and people have been worried. And with this attack in Paris this past Friday, it's reasonable to assume that, governors, like Governor Abbott and those across the country would be worried that, ISIS terrorists could be coming in as Syrian refugees and posing with that group. However, the handling of the refugees is going to be taken at a federal level. So the governors, although they would like to keep the Syrian refugees out of their state for reasons of safety, which I believe are truly that's their intention. It's ultimately going to come down to the federal government and President Obama, who've made it pretty clear that they're going to let these Syrian refugees in. So while Governor Abbott's trying to work in the best interest of Texas, I don't believe that him and the other governors will get their wish.
Okay. Well, the CEO of Refugee Services said that Texas can get sued if it tries to stop the process or refuse federal dollars. So what regarding Abbott's letter, should Texas not accept Syrian refugees, even with the chance of getting sued?
I believe that Texas, while Governor Abbott, we're working towards keeping the state as safe as possible. If we, by withholding these Syrian refugees, if it does in fact result in us losing funding for programs that help out the people from the state of Texas and would end up hurting Texas in the long run and being detrimental to, our state's economy or just the general well-being of the people of Texas, I feel that, we might ultimately be forced to take in these Syrian refugees, either, because of the federal government, President Obama, an executive order or their mandate, or we could face possible fines that could ultimately cripple our state economy and hurt the people of Texas even more. So it puts us in a difficult situation, but I believe that Governor Abbott, will find the best course of action to make sure the state of Texas stays on the right course.
Okay.
It seems to me that Governor Abbott doesn't have any problem turning down federal dollars, regardless of what the detriment is to the people of Texas. In this case, it being refugees from all over the world. In other cases, it being expanding Medicaid for the people who don't have insurance. And it seems like he, in my opinion, doesn't have the best interest of Texans or these refugees when he is thinking about making these decisions.
Alrighty, guys. We'll move on. Texas remains a hotspot for the 2016 campaigning, and news broke yesterday that Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal is suspending his run for the White House. The governor announced on Fox News Tuesday evening that it is not his time to be president. On the other side of the aisle, former Secretary of the State and current Democrat frontrunner Hillary Clinton was in Dallas on Tuesday afternoon and Austin Tuesday night for a rally and private fundraiser, respectively. At a Mountain View College in Dallas, Clinton touched on national security, making college education affordable, raising the minimum wage, and ensuring equal pay for equal work. Clinton has been in Texas on several occasions in recent months, and pure campaign announcements, plans to make more stops in Texas in months to come. So Bobby is the third member of the Republican Party to drop out. I do not believe not many Democratic candidates have dropped out, and Hillary is picking up steam. Do you think Texas can turn into a blue state with Hillary?
I think we're going to try our best. As you mentioned at the beginning, I'm working with the Hillary Clinton campaign to organize students all across this state because I believe that it is important and because I believe this can be a blue state. And I think now is the time. She wouldn't be coming here this early if she didn't believe that as well. So I think it's going to be an exciting time in Texas because of that.
Do you see a change in color?
In this current election cycle and the upcoming election cycles, I can't see Texas really turning from a pretty solid red state to a blue state. However, you've had a lot of grassroots initiatives from the Hillary Clinton campaign and other groups like Battleground Texas to try to turn the state of Texas into a consistently blue Democratic state. And if that were to happen, it would ultimately mean that the Democrats in national presidential elections would pretty much be a shoo-in every single year because of the number of electoral votes that Texas has to offer. And the Republican Party currently just takes that as a given when they're designing a campaign strategy and working on those swing states. And the last thing the Republicans need is for Texas to turn into a blue state. However, I feel that with the grassroots efforts in Texas, such as Freedom Works and other grassroots efforts from campaigns, especially we've seen from Senator Ted Cruz, he has a extensive grassroots network. I feel like it'd be difficult, in this current election cycle and those in the future, to ultimately turn Texas into a blue state.
I agree with what you're saying about there's been some incredible organization really on both sides to turn people out, but nothing is turning people out in Texas like the offensive rhetoric we're hearing from some of the major presidential candidates on the Republican side. There's nothing that is going to get the Hispanic vote to the polls like offending them. And I think the Republican Party has to be very mindful of that. And I think that's going to be a very interesting factor, regardless of all the grassroots efforts that are going on.
No, definitely the Latino population in Texas, that'll become a even bigger factor in the upcoming election cycles as they become a larger representation of the Texas demographic.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Alrighty, guys, moving on. Following recent events at the University of Missouri and Yale, students at Occidental College in Los Angeles, California, have taken to occupying administrative buildings and calling for the college president, Jonathan Veitch, to resign if their demands are not met by Friday, November 20th. Students are alleging that President Veitch turned his back on students while they spoke out on racism on campus. The blackout movement is also being carried out at New York University and Dartmouth, where students wear black and walk in solidarity for what's being called the larger Black Lives Matters movement after events at Yale and the University of Missouri. So the demands that the students are making, there's 14 demands that include fully funded black student programs, increase of black faculty, and more diversity training. Do you think these demands are too much, or are they capable?
I think they're absolutely capable, and what we're seeing now is, as they are mentioning, as part of this larger Black Lives movement, we for so long have been leaving a whole heap of our population behind, and for a lot of institutions, it wasn't on accident that we were doing that. And so I think these demands are completely reasonable, and as we've seen at some of the aforementioned colleges, when you organize well, when you make the right demands and you work towards them, it is possible to meet those demands.
Alrighty, well, President Veitch said that we simply cannot meet every demand on this list. He even said that he's happy to resign. It sounds like he's giving up, or that he doesn't really care about the movement.
No, it sounds like President Veach is in a pretty difficult situation. Across the country, we've had a lot of, protests with the Black Lives Matter movement and the current protest in Missouri. So I can see that President Veach in this current situation, he's under a lot of pressure, and he might not feel that he's capable of meeting these demands, and might find it a better option for himself, in the present and the future to resign his position. I'm not saying that that is the best move, but I'm not President Veach, so I don't know what he's thinking. So for him, that might be the easiest move, and perhaps some of these demands are reasonable. But I think we're seeing across the country there's been a lot of uproar, a lot of protest at certain campuses such as Yale and NYU. So it'll be interesting to monitor these situations and see how these organizations continue to respond.
Alrighty, guys. So stay tuned. Still to come, how students here at UT are reacting to Friday's events in Paris. On Friday night, 129 people were killed in a total of 6 attacks that took place throughout Paris. As Paris and the rest of the world mourn, UT students studying abroad in Paris were all marked safe, and Facebook took to launching a campaign via Avi profile pictures to show support for Paris in light of the attacks. We asked students here at UT in Austin for the reaction and thoughts on the Paris attacks.
Really was extremely shocking, especially because I have a lot of friends and close people that are close to me that are living in Paris and living in those parts of Paris, because the places that were attacked were more of like student areas.
It was heartbreaking. I actually have a couple of friends who are studying abroad, and they were just in Paris like a week before the attack happened.
A country that we're aligned with, everyone in the U.S. is like, oh, this is a tragedy, whereas if it happens anywhere else, it may not be, on any kind of news.
One, the United States has a really strong relationship with them, so that's why I feel like it hits closer to home, because they're more civilized than other Middle Eastern countries, and they should be safer, therefore.
Okay, so obviously we mourn with Paris after this tragedy, but how does this differ from the attacks that have been ongoing in the Middle East?
I think the main difference that we're seeing in the media is it's happening in people's own lives in Western culture. It's happening when you're sitting outside at a cafe. It's happening when you're going to a rock concert. It's these places where we're comfortable in our spaces, and that is the aim of terrorism, to make you uncomfortable in the places where you are most comfortable. And so I think that it was a very well-planned attack in that manner, but as a reaction to that, we have to make sure that we're still going to those concerts. Austin is always going to be a place where we're going to concerts, and we can't be afraid of that, or then they have succeeded in their goals. So I think we have to keep going about our everyday lives.
Exactly. Do you think this will hinder tourism in Paris or in Europe?
I think maybe in the short term it might hinder tourism, or if another attack occurs, that would also hinder tourism too, because the tourists wouldn't feel safe. But what we just talked about, this is the first major attack we've seen in a Western European country. The majority of terrorist attacks we've heard from the ISIS organization has been in the Middle East, and France is a country that we, as the United States, we have such strong historical and cultural ties with, that it really hits home, because that's a top tourist destination for Americans, and it's a place that we want to feel like we can be safe visiting. So in that respect, it was a brand new type of attack, and now we're seeing retaliation from both the United States and French government.
Alrighty. Now when we come back, we'll discuss how Texas campus carry will be implemented at UT. Keep it right here on Tower Talks. On Friday, Texas Christian University announced they're opting out of the campus carry, a bill passed during the 84th legislative session in Texas. Per the bill's statute, private universities in Texas are able to opt out of the measure, while public universities aren't able to do so. They can designate places on their campuses as gun-free zones. Texas State University announced their recommendations last week, and among them is the banning of guns in areas on campus where children and counseling are present. Guns on campus have gotten a lot of attention this semester, and between protests, public forums, and debates, the Campus Carry Working Group is set to present recommendations to President Finnes by the end of the semester. Okay, so TCU is opting out. Do you think more private schools will follow this move?
Yes, I do believe the private schools will, just because from a logistics standpoint, it is the easiest choice, although, just because it's easy does not necessarily mean it is the correct choice. It's just easier to keep the status quo than integrate, concealed carry into a environment that has not had it for, since concealed carry was passed in Texas 20 years ago.
Okay, obviously, safe zones are wanted, but arguments have been made about placing storage units on campus that would raise the cost of tax dollars by people to the school. Do you agree with storage units or no?
I believe in that Texas state recommendation, they also opted out of those areas to store guns, and I think UT will follow that same fashion, because leaving your guns unattended has a lot of risk associated with it. But the one thing we didn't see with those Texas state recommendations was any regard for what's happening in the classroom. And we've seen movements all across the state, especially at UT, with professors speaking up about not wanting these guns in their classrooms, where we're having these heated debates about topics. We need to be able to have those debates without the fear of guns in the classroom. And they completely ignored that, and I hope that our working group will not do the same thing.
Alrighty, guys. So we are not done yet. Keep it right here for our social media sign out. On Wednesday morning, Ted Cruz, a U.S. Senator from Texas and current GOP candidate, met reporters in Washington and publicly challenged President Obama to a debate on the refugees crisis. Cruz responded to remarks made earlier by Obama that refusing Syrian refugees is un-American and offensive. Looking dead in the camera, Cruz told the president, "Insult me to my face," saying that any of the news networks would host a debate for them on the subject of refugee policy. So, Ted Cruz is fired up about Obama's statements.
Isn't he always?
Yes. Thoughts on what he was saying?
I think, first of all, it's ridiculous, and he knows it's ridiculous. The president is never going to debate him openly on this issue. They're going to have different beliefs on this, and I think I agree with the president, obviously. But he's just throwing red meat as we get closer to this primary. He's trying to talk to that furthest right part of his base, insult Obama at every chance he can get, and doesn't care who's getting harmed in that.
Exactly. Was this a bad move on Ted Cruz?
No, I don't believe so. Ted Cruz has always been known for his fiery personality, both when he was running for Senate and while in the Senate when he was trying to defund Obamacare. So I feel that this just kind of plays to his overall character and image that he creates of himself. That is a very passionate and fiery individual that is concerned with the safety of his constituents and the people of America. So I feel that this was not really a bad move on his part. It was just more playing to his image that he's created throughout his time in the Senate and in this current presidential race. So I just feel like it's something that we can expect more from in the future.
I agree. I think when we're looking at this primary, he's doing very well by this primary by making moves like this. But once we get to that general election, I think he's really going to regret making statements like this.
Exactly. Alrighty, guys, for political updates throughout the week, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and email your comments to towertalksut@gmail.com. Thanks to our guests, Andrew and Charlie, for joining us in studio tonight. We'll be back December 2nd after a quick break for Thanksgiving. I'm Mackenzie Palmer, your host, wishing you all a great rest of your evening.